Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video for today. So is Novo Nordisk too cheap to ignore at $45.34 at around $200 billion in a market cap? As you can see, Novo Nordisk is currently experiencing a drawdown close to 70% from the highs back in May 2024. So this has been a drawdown that has started 12 months or so ago. It always came down more and more, as you can see right here, right? The stock went down, was cheap at around $80, right? You can go back and look at my videos, valuation wise, all of it was cheap. But the problem here with things being cheap on the pricing metric is that, well, even today, right? Even today, trading PE, 23.3 times. Okay, you look at the past earnings, you look at the price, you get this multiple. But if you look at the forward one, the forward one is at 12.3 times, which for a company that is still expected to grow revenue compound at 11% for the next 2 years and EPS just 8.3%, it's not that cheap. It's not expensive. It's not that cheap. Now, the thing here is that currently these expectations are also baking in the reduced guidance. And that's the thing. Previously, the guidance was still quite good. And so the expectations, the growth rates were much better, which then made us look at this stock and say, oh, it's actually very cheap. But now with the reduced guidance and with the slowdown in growth, whether it's top and bottom line, it is not as cheap as before. I hope that's quite clear. Things, of course, can change when a management just says, you know what, we were expecting to grow 15, 16% or so. Now we're only expecting to grow 11%. Then yeah, of course, things can change quite quickly. But all in all, margin-wise, currently, of course, margins do get hit a little bit right now as well. But all in all, margins over the last 12 months, whether it's gross, EBITDA, operating, net, or free cash flow margin, which in my opinion is still the best metric to look at, still very good. Okay? Still very, very good. Now for Novo Nordisk, there is a reason why we've seen this stock go down close to 70%. And the reason didn't start last month when they changed CEO, 3 months ago, 4 months ago. No, the reason started at the end of 2024. If you remember why, write it down in the comments. And if not, just wait a second and I'll go over every single thing that went wrong with Novo Nordisk. We're also going to have a quick look at the recent earnings report. Now, nothing really new popped up because if you remember, not so long ago, they provided us here at the end of July, they already provided us with an update on the guidance and on the performance for the first 6 months of the year. So those numbers haven't changed. Okay, so that's not that surprising. The problem here is that the stock keeps going down further and further. And yes, this is again another turnaround story. It's not going to be a V-shaped type of recovery, so forget about that. If you think that this is going to go to $80 next month, you can forget about it. But if you believe that Novo Nordisk is a strong company that can turn the ship around and go back to growth mode, then yes, this is a market-beating stock in the future, for sure. I think it can even crush the market's performance, but it will take time. You might say, yeah, but in the meantime, opportunity cost. Okay, if you have that crystal ball, then that is definitely something useful to look at right now. But if you are looking, let's say 3-5 years from now, is Novo Nordisk going to be worth a lot more than $45 or not? I think it's safe to say that it will be. We'll go over all of the numbers and everything you need to know throughout the video. If you enjoy this type of videos, hit all the buttons. We'd really appreciate that, especially notification bell. Tomorrow we're going live for Nebius earnings report. I'm also going to cover real quick Oscar in another video, so stay tuned for that. If you want to support me even further, do check out the link down in the description and in the pinned comment to the top 10 best stocks to buy now, or go to fool.com/couchinvestor. Thank you very much. All right, so let's go over everything that went wrong. Starting here in December 2024, Novo Nordisk phase 3 trial data for its next generation weight loss drug, CagriSema, showed efficacy that was perceived as underwhelming by investors. The trial results, which showed a weight loss of 22.7% in patients without diabetes, fell short of the company's prior projection of 25%. This raised concern that CagriSema might not be a significant leap over its rival, Eli Lilly's Zepbound, which by the way Eli Lilly does report on Thursday, and could weaken Novo Nordisk's ability to maintain its market leadership. So hit number 1 happened December 24. Then Eli Lilly's drugs have shown comparable or even superior clinical efficacy in some trials. This has led to Eli Lilly gaining significant market share, putting direct pressure on Novo Nordisk's dominance with Wegovy and Ozempic. Eli Lilly has products like Zepbound and Mounjaro. Fast forward a couple of months. In July 25, the company took the dramatic step of slashing its financial outlook for the second time in 2025. This move was a major blow to investor confidence. The company lowered its 2025 sales growth forecast from 13 to 21% to 8 to 14%, and its operating profit growth projections from 16 to 24% down to 10 to 16%, basically 13% at the midpoint, and here 11% or so at the midpoint. Management cited weaker than expected demand for its drugs due to a combination of competition and the ongoing impact of compounding pharmacies. Number 4, CEO change. In May, longtime CEO announced he would be stepping down, with the new CEO taking the helm in August 24. This was announced basically at the end of July. The leadership change has contributed to investor uncertainty, especially for that period where we didn't know who the new CEO is going to be, and then the decision was made that it's going to be someone from inside the company, someone that has been with the company for over 30 years. You might say this is bad. I think it's okay, because that means that they can move quite quickly. He knows the business inside out, so they can move quite quickly with the recovery. And then the last one here, compounding pharmacies and regulatory risks. So Novo Nordisk has been in a guerrilla war with compounding pharmacies selling cheaper, unapproved version of its drugs. Despite legal and regulatory actions, which they are, actually accelerating legal action more recently, these efforts have not been materially successful in curbing the practice, which continues to undermine sales and market penetration. Longer-term risks such as potential US drug pricing negotiations and the expiration of key patents also contribute to the negative sentiment. Now, it's very important to understand this, because if you're an investor in Novo Nordisk, you would like them to be as aggressive as possible to protect their IP. Because if that's not the case, then what's the point in investing in Novo Nordisk if they're not aggressively protecting things that they've spent billions of dollars researching and developing? It makes sense. Then as for the US drug pricing negotiations, and of course also the fact that you don't have to forget that you have patents that are expiring, that's also something that you have to think about. It was mismanaged. Let's be honest, it's a great business that was just mismanaged. Do you think that it will be better managed in the future? That's the question you have to ask yourself before you click the buy button. Now, as for the reported quarter, as you can see right here, Wegovy, that's the light blue bar right here, that has been growing extremely rapidly in billions of dollars right here, billions of Danish kroner, compared to Ozempic. Now, Ozempic is still much bigger, but as you can see, Ozempic has been coming down for 2 consecutive quarters, while Wegovy revenue is up 67% year over year. Now, if we go back here on fiscal.ai, there's a link pinned in the comment. Sales increased 16% in Danish kroner, or 18% on a constant exchange rate. Operating profit did increase 29%. Obesity care sales was up 58%. Diabetes was only up 8%, all of that on a constant exchange rate. And diluted earnings per share increased by 23%, and that's in Danish kroner. So all in all, it was still good. But the problem is that, okay, that's the first 6 months as well. First 6 months was still fine. But you're investing not in what has happened with the company in the past, right? That's also something I found very strange. With people posting charts about a company's performance in the last 3 years or so. Oh, look, it has grown at a compounded rate of 50%. Okay, that's great. But I'm investing in what comes next. And what comes next for most of these companies is not always 50%, whereas rarely 50% compounded growth. Right? Maybe the hyper growth cycle already happened, and now we're entering the normal growth cycle. And for normal growth cycle compared to hyper growth cycle, there is a complete different price that you have to pay. Always important to remember that. Then they shared the following slides here. So sales growth of 18% driven by both operating units. So we can see how each one has grown here. GLP-1 diabetes, 10%. You can see 10% here. IO is international operations, and then US is 9% here. Obesity care grew 58%. So in total, if you add rare diseases and insulin, you get 18%. They grew 19% internationally and 17% in US operation. And all of that here, of course, is growth in constant exchange rate. And here you can see in the markets, all of this is for the first 6 months of 2025. Then looking at US diabetes, GLP-1 class growth, that is slowing compared to the prior years. That is, again, true, which is why I made the point that, yeah, previously we were in that hyper growth mode, which we're not in anymore. That doesn't mean that we should not be expecting more growth. Actually, if we look at what Wegovy has been doing, Wegovy has been doing very, very well. So US branded anti-obesity medication market expansion continues, while GLP-1 compounding continues as well. So they say here, Novo Nordisk is focused on actively preventing unlawful and unsafe compounding. This is what you want to see as a Novo Nordisk shareholder. As a HIMSS shareholder, probably not so much. International operations sales growth did grow by 19%, as we've seen, driven by GLP-1, diabetes, and obesity care. We can see here the emerging markets, APAC, region of China, UCAN, and then overall it's up 10% here. You can also see which type of product, whether it's Ozempic, Rybelsus, Victoza, and of course all of those metrics here are on a constant exchange rate, and it is for the first 6 months. Yes, I know. Why aren't they breaking this down per quarter? It is what it is. It's most of the times the same thing here for a lot of European companies. Let me put myself right here. But then if we look at investing for the future, this is the slide that you want to look at. So the high unmet needs in diabetes and obesity and low market penetration to date makes unlocking the market a key priority. So over 550 million people live with diabetes globally, with over 90% outside the United States. Over 900 million people with obesity globally, with around also 90% outside the United States. So the opportunity here for them is still huge, for them, for Eli Lilly. But unlocking the market is a key priority. To unlock the market, you have to have razor sharp focus here and very, very good execution. Something that over the past, let's call it year or two, has not been present at Novo Nordisk. Hopefully, with the new CEO, with some changes inside the company, these things will change. So yes, the opportunity is still quite big. So this is still a company that is growing. Okay, it's still a company that is growing. Even for this year, even with the revised financial outlook for 2025, still expected to grow, right? Still expected to grow 8 to 14%. I would also say that maybe they're putting the bar here quite low, new CEO coming in. And so as always, you want to put realistic figures and then try and beat those to reward yourself and to make sure that, well, the market is like, oh, actually, you know what? Actually, they perform quite well. They perform better than expected. Plus, I mean, this is still a very profitable company. Operating profit growth, 10 to 16%, so 13% at the midpoint. Huge decrease in expected growth rates, but it's still a company that's expected to grow. It's still a very profitable company as well. So the moment they can turn this around, I think this thing can move quite quickly. But I don't think it will happen anytime soon. Now, what are they doing in order to turn things around? What are they most excited about? So, a couple of things here. Novo Nordisk is actively working to expand the reach and coverage of its key drugs, particularly Wegovy. So we've had here effectively July 1st, 25, Wegovy is the only GLP-1 medicine covered by obesity on the CVS national template formulary. Early indicators show positive prescription trends driven by this decision. Then, NovoCare pharmacy expansion. The company is investing in direct-to-patient initiatives like NovoCare Pharmacy to expand access to Wegovy, especially for the cash-paying patient channel. Ozempic will also be offered through this service later this year. As for internationally, with improved supply for both Ozempic and Wegovy, the company is accelerating launches and commercial activities in international markets. Wegovy has launched in approximately 35 countries, with more planned for the second half of the year. Then, with companies like Novo and Eli Lilly, it is important to understand the product pipeline that they have, because Eli Lilly, some other companies out there, right? I think Viking Therapeutics as well, they're already working on an oral solution, because right now it's injections. Novo Nordisk, Eli Lilly, Vikings, probably some other companies out there, they're all working towards a oral solution, because I don't need it, thankfully, but injecting yourself each and every day can be quite annoying. Now, if you can have an oral solution, that's just much, much simpler, right? Just pop the pill and that's about it. Now, of course, it's not as simple as that. You need to go through all the phases of approvals. You need to see, is it, well, actually worth it, right? How much weight are you losing? How many days does it take? What is the churn rate, let's say, because you can get sick, you can get nauseous. So all of these things you have to think about. And this is basically what has happened at the end of last year, right? The 22.7% that we've talked about at the start of the video, they thought it was 25%. So there are some metrics that you have to follow if you follow these types of companies, right? Because if one phase gets delayed, one phase doesn't produce the results that it should, then yes, this impacts the stock, this impacts the business. Now in this case here, they do expect to launch a couple of new products to get some regulatory approval for some of the products here as well, a lot of them for 2025. And then we have here Novo Nordisk plans to initiate broad phase 3 development program with amycretin, or I don't know if I pronounce it correctly, but okay, all of these names are quite strange, for adults with overweight and obesity in 2026. This is a key next generation candidate. So again, every time they have these types of things, important to follow them and also compare to what Eli Lilly has as a competing product. And so looking at the stock right now, of course, like I said, the drawdown did start a year ago. Basically a year ago, the drawdown did start, and then this was the first big hit after the weakish result. You've got this big hit going from $110 to around $80 or so. And since then, well, the hits kept on coming. And now we've got the latest hit right here after the guidance was reduced. And so we're back to prices not seen since January 22 and I'd say October 2022 as well, around $45 on a weekly. We're not oversold just yet. On the daily, we are oversold by quite a lot, I'd say. Now, is it too cheap to ignore? To answer the question, I think it's getting there for sure. I think you can start, if you're really interested in that, you can start dollar cost averaging and opening up a small position. But like I said, I don't have a position in Novo Nordisk. You know, I love turnaround stories, but I already have too many in the portfolio. I already have United Health. I went with that. I went with Oscar, although Oscar is less of a turnaround story, more of a potential multi-bagger type of story, but is in the same industry as United Health. But Novo is definitely very, very attractive at these prices. I'm not going to lie, Novo is very attractive at those prices. I can understand why people go with it. I can also understand why people just don't want to wait. And that's fine. You can also wait, right? People say, oh, you like to catch falling knives. No, I just like to look at businesses that are very cheap already at a certain price. Of course, with this one, like I said, it is going to take a while until we actually see a full-on recovery. So you can buy a quarter or just after they report a very good quarter and the turnaround has started. Stock will go up 10%, 15%, 20% or so, and that's fine. If you believe that there is a turnaround, that the upside here is probably 100% in the future, if not more. So all in all, that's about it for me in this video. Do share your thoughts down in the comment section below. Like, subscribe, do all of that, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.